Do you want me to take that?
Pardon?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, that's fine.
That'll be fine.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks very much, Megan. I'm very conscious that you've probably all come here for answers, and you've now got more questions than answers. And the thing about bans is it makes things very, very simple. And when we start to unpick that and we say, well, maybe bans aren't as positive as some of the research suggests, it leaves us then with thinking, well, if we're not going to ban them, we have to keep them safe on their devices. So we didn't want to leave you with that kind of sense of, well, I was hoping to come here and have all the answers and know what the answer was now and just leave you off with all these questions. So we are now going to do a presentation. This is the last one of the day, you'll be pleased to hear, because it's been a long day now. But we're going to do a quick presentation. And this presentation that Carmel's going to do around developing an agreement with your child or young person is part of a bigger session. And we do these sessions online all the time, and we also deliver them in schools. So if the taster you get today on this is useful to you, that's great. But if you want more, then keep an eye on our website and social media. And also, if you contact the office, we can also deliver the training in your school. So I'll hand over to Carmel now. Thank you.
Great, thanks Sonia. Just get my presentation here. There we go. Okay, it's just coming, as you can see, hopefully. So's Christmas, as you. It is just coming, but here is the answer. No, here's one possible answer. And there is one of these for everyone in the audience. As you're leaving today, we're going to give you a bag full of information. And this is one of the things that's in your bag of information. And we're calling it an online agreement. So I want to tell you about it. I want to take you through it. And I want to start by telling you kind of a little bit about where we're coming from with this. If this is going to play ball with me. Why is that not doing what it's supposed to do? Sorry. There we go. Okay. So what is it? Basically, it's a guide to support you to keep your children and young people safe online. So that's what this is. It differs from family to family, but it always starts with listening. Now, any of you who've done any of our training programs in the National Parents Council, you'll know that every single training program we do, whether it's anti-bullying, whether it's supporting your child's mental health and well-being, whether it's transitioning from primary into post-primary, every single course we do involves an element of listening. And we don't make any apology for that. We think it's one of the most important things that you can do is listen to your child. Have a conversation with your child, but start with listening. So no different than anything else, the family agreement starts with listening. And I think it ties in, they love giving me the graveyard shift at the end of the day, but it does tie in with everything that we've heard all day. From Shane in the very first talk this morning about sitting around the table, talking and listening as a family. And that's exactly what we're suggesting you do right at the beginning, before you do anything else about talking to your child about being safe online and coming up with this agreement. Again, I was very encouraged to hear Professor Etchells just this afternoon talking about having a conversation and saying exactly what I'm saying here, which is we start that conversation with asking our children or young people, what do you like to do online? He exactly mentioned that, having a conversation. What is it you enjoy? And what is it about that you enjoy? And then maybe sharing with them about what you enjoy about being online, what you enjoy about using whichever device it might be, and explain to them why you think it's fun. And maybe going back to when you were younger, to your childhood or teenage years, and saying, okay, we didn't have all of this, so we didn't have one device that could do so many things. But we had a number of different devices. So we might have had a radio. Most of you are probably not as old as me in remembering listening to, radio, whatever it was, in Belgium or somewhere, kind of discreetly late at night. But we might have had a radio, a record player, we had a TV, just the one with the two stations, just like Shane. We had books, but we had lots of different ways to engage with things that all of us now are engaging with in one device, on our phones or on our tablets. So we're talking about starting with, what is it you enjoy about being online? What do you do and why is it fun? We want to build a situation where we have this open communication, because it is possible that your child could be, or young person, could be reluctant to speak about a bad experience. And again, Professor Etchells referenced this. We don't want that situation. We don't want a situation where your child is thinking, oh no, I can't tell mum or dad about that, because if I do, what does the child think you're going to do? Take it off them. They think that's going to be your reaction. That, it's a kind of a worry. Oh God, I knew we shouldn't have let you have that phone because this is exactly what I worried about. And now look, it's after happening, so give it back to me quick. And that's problem solved, So they may be reluctant to tell you about it if you haven't had this open conversation, if you haven't got a situation in your family where we talk about things. So we want to make sure we have open communication. We won't wait until something bad happens. We'll talk about it all the time. So we'll talk about, as Professor Etchell said, what do you do online? How does it work? And if you have anything that you're worried about, that you're thinking, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see. So does anybody else get that message? I always get it on a Monday morning on my phone at about 9:15 to tell me how much screen time I had last week. And initially when I look at it and it says you're up, 20 minutes on the previous week, and I kind of go, oh God, what was I doing? And I feel like that's a bad thing somehow. And then I ask myself, well, what was I actually doing? What did those hours, what were they made up of? And I think, well, the first thing I do every single morning is I read the Irish Times on my phone. That's not necessarily a bad thing or something I should feel guilty about. I should actually be congratulating myself. I found the time, to read the Irish Times every morning this week. So that's a good thing. So, I'm talking to my children then and saying to them, okay, so your screen time is whatever it is, but what was it you were doing? What was that time made up of? So I'm reassuring them that because something went wrong, my automatic response is not going to be, I'll take it away from you, or I'll ban you. That's not going to be my automatic response. My response is going to be, let's see what we can do to make it better so it won't happen again. Now, we all know there are risks, and we've seen them, and we know what parents worry about in terms of allowing their children to go online. And they're very valid concerns, very valid concerns. And obviously, all of this depends on the age and development and maturity of your child. But we know there are valid concerns of children spending too much time online, but also lots and lots of really positives, lots and lots of opportunities for children and for us. So just take a moment maybe and think about, what do your children or your young people do online? And the list goes on, doesn't it? It is all of the different aspects of their lives, whether it might be homework, whether it might be socializing, whether it might be connecting with family, whether it might be being creative in, an app that allows that, or whether it might be a little bit, and I do have to put my hands up and say those hours that they tell me about on a Monday morning, some of those are Instagram, where I was mindlessly scrolling along something. And I might feel a bit guilty about those and say, why am I feeling guilty? It was a bit of a waste of time. And then I think back to when I was maybe in my 20s, I might have flicked through some very light magazine of some kind and think, well, was that a really useful use of my time? And then I'm thinking about what Shane said about that, kind of, what was it he called it, where you're not really thinking about too much at all. You're just kind of in the, flow. That was it. Thank you. The flow. So I'm thinking, maybe I was in flow. Maybe that's what it was. But there certainly are risks as well of not allowing your child to go online. And the young people told us that in Megan's research. They felt their digital skills might be underdeveloped. So that digital literacy that those young people that Megan referred to were talking about, if we don't allow them to go online, they might be left behind educationally or creatively, because a lot of the apps and so on that they're using are very creative or educational. But for me, this last point is the most important. If we don't allow them to go online, then the internet becomes a secret activity, and that could be very unsafe. So, the 12-year-old who goes to somebody else's house on a Friday and they're playing this game and something goes wrong and something upsets your 12-year-old. But at home, the internet is banned. So that 12-year-old doesn't feel like he can come home and talk to you because he shouldn't have been there in the first place. He shouldn't have done it. And again, a bit like I think in real life, when I was growing up, there were certain places we weren't allowed to go. We used to call it the wreck, the red wreck near where I grew up. We weren't allowed to go there because it was quite dangerous. You know, it was a wreck, so it was full of old, useless things that people had thrown away. So it was quite a dangerous place to be. And my sister, we went one day, of course, because we weren't supposed to, and she got hurt when we were there. And we went home, and we felt like we couldn't tell, we couldn't say, you know, that's where we were because we weren't supposed to have been there. And she ended up getting cut with a rusty nail and needing a tetanus. And it was all of this because we never said, because we were afraid we'd be in really big trouble. So what we want to suggest is this online agreement. But we've got a few steps to take before we get to there. So the first thing, we'll keep on saying about this open communication, but we're going to have an open communication about an online agreement. So we're going to start by saying to them, I went to this talk, or I listened online to this talk by the NPC about an online agreement, and I think we should do that in our family. So we're setting them up for it. We're telling them in advance, I think we should do it. And we're asking them, well, you know, what do you think? What do you think about this idea? Because I think it's a good idea. What do you think? But we're going to keep that conversation positive. Because we know that accessing the internet can have very positive outcomes. And we're going to tell them that. And we're going to say, you know, I get a lot of positives from looking at things and apps and so on the internet. I mean, any of us who take out our phone and look at the different apps and look at, you know, what useful things are on there. One of the most useful to me ever is the Dublin Bus app, or it's now the Transport for Ireland app. You know, it's revolutionary that I can find out what time the bus is coming, you know, so long as it doesn't, it's not one of those phantom buses that don't exist. But on the whole, so there's so many positives. So we're framing it in that way. We're not saying to them, we're going to have a conversation about how we're going to ban you from this. We're having a positive conversation about how we're going to keep you safe, because that's the most important thing to us as your parents. We want to keep you safe. The first thing we're going to do, and again, I was so glad to hear Professor Etchells reference it, we're going to look at what do we mean by screen time, because not all screen time is the same. So think about the different things that you're doing on your phone or on your tablet or whatever screen you're looking at. You know, are you reading a book? Are you having a conversation with your sister in Australia? Are you, you know, learning a new skill? That's what everyone in my house does now. We don't know how to, you know, whatever it might be, change the light bulb. Look it up on YouTube. There's a video for everything. I had a hire car the other week and I couldn't see the petrol. I couldn't see where I was supposed to put the petrol in. And I'm sitting in the petrol station on YouTube going, where is the, you know, for this car? We can find out so much. So we want to frame all this in a positive way. We want to define what is screen time, because not all screen time is the same. So we tell our children this. So we tell them this isn't about limiting, it isn't about banning, it's about an agreement between us. And we know that they're going to look different from home to home, because obviously children have access in different ways, they're different ages, you know, so it's not a one size fits all. It's going to be fitting for your family. So there's 5 sections to our online agreement, and it's all in here in the bag that you're going to take home. So the first section is about screen time, and it's exactly what we said, not all screen time is the same. So we want to define that in the first instance. So we're going to look at what type of screen time is it? Are you using your screen to do homework? Are you watching a TV on your tablet, TV program? Are you talking to your granny on Zoom? Is it passive or is it active? Now, you might need to explain that to your younger child, but are you sitting there just, as I say, kind of mindlessly looking at something, or are you actually doing something, you know, in a game like Roblox or Minecraft, or are you preparing something, are you designing something? Is that the game that you're doing? And, you know, that's something we're going to accept. Yes, that is something. It's fun, it's enjoyable, I like doing it. It's all about what type of screen time is it? Is it that you're listening to music? Is it that you're on social media? Are you reading your book? You know, I mean, we all want to encourage our children to read, and I love seeing children reading their books. And maybe I'm being judgmental saying, oh, you're great because you're reading a book. But maybe the other child on their tablet is also reading a book. You know, it's just a different way of doing it. So the first thing we do is we define screen time. And when we're doing that, and we've made an agreement around screen time, again, very glad to hear Professor Etchell say the same thing, and Megan found in their research, modelling good behaviour, setting a good example is so important. So if you decide as a family, you know, what we're going to put in our agreement is when we sit at the table, like Shane mentioned in the first talk, when we sit at the table, the phones are away. I loved what he said about the expensive meal with his grown-up children and the phone stays in the car, and I thought, I'm going to do that. Because as soon as one person does, and it's nearly like, oh God, he got a message. I must say, is that from me as well? And, if my husband is looking at his phone, I'm like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, did they message me? Is that in a group chat? So we're all at it. So leaving it in the car, I thought, great. But if that's your agreement, then you all do it. So it's not, I need to check my phone for work. I'm more important than you. We've agreed we're not using our phones at the table, so we're all putting them away. And it can be very tempting to use a screen to keep maybe particularly younger children occupied. But if that's what you're doing, the message is very confused to them. So it's like 1 minute mom and dad are saying no, and then the next minute, because they need peace, it's like, here you go, here's the screen. So it's confusing for the child. So the second part of our online agreement is about sharing information. We need to look at how much should they share. How much should they share? So we look at things like privacy settings. If we're putting a privacy setting on, what does that look like? How does it work? We look at things like online friends. Are they friends? We'll agree. And again, all of this will depend on the age and stage of development of your child. So, in the very first instance, it might be, there's only family. That's the only people who are friends. And then it might be gradually, we'll increase that, and we'll, include people that you actually know who are friends, and so on. We'll talk about responding to messages. How will you do that? What will you do? So all of that goes in there. So we're talking about sharing. And then we're explaining to them about a digital footprint. What type of a footprint is a digital footprint? Now, all of your children will have grown up with devices, digital devices being in their world. So maybe they don't think in the same way that we might about when we go online, what kind of a trail or footprint we're leaving. We've all had messages when we've just been talking about something, like I might like to go on holiday in next year. We'll get a message then, an ad for such a thing. And we like something on Facebook, and next thing, 5 times we're being shown where you can buy silk pillowcases or whatever it is. So we know that. We know that we're leaving a digital trail as we go along, as we give information to websites or social networks. We know we're giving information away about ourselves. We know our club card in whatever shop you shop in. They didn't give you that for the good of their health. They gave it to you so they could check your shopping habits and offer you things. So we know that. Children and young people, maybe not so much. So we do need to really talk about that. We need to talk to them about photos that they share online and what other people share is about them. What is that? How does that? Where does it go? And you might find this helpful to talk about that, showing them not all footprints are the same. So social media is a bit like a concrete footprint. It's there forever. It's going to stay. And we've all heard stories about somebody, something came up that was posted 10, 15 years ago and it came back to haunt them or it reappeared or whatever. But sending a text to your parent or a friend, that's more like a footprint in the sand. It'll be washed away when the tide comes in. So having those conversations is important. The third part of the online agreement is about online content. We know that everything we find online isn't suitable for everybody. Children, young people, maybe not so clear about that. We know that everything we find online isn't true. We know that there's fake news. We know that some websites are more reliable than others. We know that we have to check the source. Again, not every child or young person knows that. So we need to have that conversation about them. We need to talk to them about online content. And again, reassure them that if they come across something that upsets them, that isn't designed for them, that they're worried about, that they can come to us and talk to us, that they can tell you, Mom, Dad, this came up on my phone. And that you're not going to automatically then say, right, no phone, no tablet, never again, you're done. You're not going to do that because you've had this conversation and it's part of your online agreement. The fourth one is about online communication. So here you're monitoring your child's online activity. Now, the first part of that is that your child needs to know, or your young person, that this is what you're going to do. So, Anya mentioned we give these talks in school. I was in a school giving this talk a while ago, and a parent said, oh, but is that not a bit like looking at his diary, or her diary, under their pillow, and I'm sneaking in when they're gone to school and reading their diary? And I said, no, it's absolutely not like that. And the reason why it's not like that is I've already had this conversation. They know that this is what I'm going to do. They know that I'm going to be looking at their online activity because we've agreed it. And it's in here as part of our online agreement. So it's not the same as looking at their diary, because if I was looking at their diary when they're gone to school, they didn't expect that I was going to read their diary. You know, they thought their diary was a private place where they could put their thoughts and fears and whatever's. So I've betrayed that trust by looking at their diary. I'm not betraying their trust here because we've had this conversation. We have agreed together that I might be their friend in a particular group. I might be part of their friend group, and they know that. This isn't something that they just discover, you know, oh God, what's Mom doing on here? We could agree that they're going to show me their activity. So again, it's not like I'm policing them. I'm saying to them, you know, on a regular basis, let's, you know, have a look at this and see what you're looking at. And like everything, as they get older and as they get more digitally literate, you know, as they're feeling themselves, I can be safer and you're agreeing they can be safer, this can be less and less, you know. But you're always available. You're there for them to come back to whenever they might need to. You're there. The social networking in terms of online communication, that's something that people are concerned about, and we saw that in the talks earlier. A lot of times parents ask us, at what age should I allow my child to use social media? Now, we tell them in Ireland, children under the age of 16 are not permitted to access social media services. That's the law. So we tell people that, but we don't dictate. It's not us, it's you as a parent. That's your decision to make. But when you've decided that your child is ready for a social media account, agree the appropriate platform that you're happy for them to use. So talk to them. If they're saying to you, Dad, I really want to go on Snapchat. Well, then you're like, okay, well, let's have a look at it. Let's see what it is. Let's see how it works. Let's see, tell me why. You know, and you're exploring all of that together. The top concerns that parents told us they had, and this was in a survey from 2021, 59% of parents concerned about their child being contacted by strangers online. 59% worry about their children being exposed to inappropriate or explicit content online. So that's why we included both of those aspects in our online agreement. 72% of parents are worried about their child being bullied, which relates exactly to what Megan's research found as well in terms of what are the main concerns. We have a talk, I mentioned it earlier, on bullying that we do online, or we can come to your school to do, and we will include aspects of cyberbullying on that as well. So the last piece of our online agreement is about getting help when things go wrong. Because things might go wrong, things mightn't be as we always want them to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to listen. We do it in every aspect, so we're going to listen here. We try not to react. So when we say something go wrong, we mean they came across something online that upset them or was worrying or they didn't understand or was frightening or whatever. Or somebody was mean to them, they were left out of a group, somebody made a mean comment, or posted a picture that wasn't very complimentary or was upsetting or whatever. So what we're saying is, try not to overreact. So if they come to you and say, oh, Dad, such a person put up this and you know, it's horrible, and you're going, oh my God, I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. I knew this is exactly why I said we shouldn't let you have it, and now you have it, and suddenly you've gone crazy. And now they're thinking, oh God, I thought it was bad. Now it's really bad, because look at Mom, she's losing it. Like, you know, so this is really bad. So try not to react. Try to be calm and listen, and let them tell their full story. Give them that time and space to say, here's what happened, and try not to interrupt. I know that can be difficult, and you might be feeling, oh, my poor precious child, you know, that mean person, what a horrible thing to do. But it's not going to help if you're overreacting. So trying to stay calm and trying to just let them tell their full story. Everything changes, we know that. The activities are changing. So we need to ensure that we have that communication all the time. This isn't a one-off. You know, we don't have a conversation now when you're 12 and that's it. We never have to talk about this again. It's constant. It's ongoing all of the time. So when we're doing the agreement then, these are the things that we're going to think about. They know in advance, and that's very empowering for them, to know we're going to do this. We're going to have this conversation, not now this minute, but next Tuesday. Or when, you know, after dinner on Thursday or whenever. So we know, and they know, you're going to listen, you're going to work together to come up with this agreement. So it's important that everybody knows what's going to be discussed. So we would suggest you give them, it doesn't have to be a hard copy, it can be online, but you give them one so they know what's in it. What are we going to talk about? How is this going to happen? So we discuss it, everyone has a blank one, they know this is what's going to happen in a few days' time. That builds that respect. And Megan's research, I think, was very interesting, where the students were saying, well, there's no point in talking to the teachers. Either they can't do anything about it, or they're not the kind of people, you know, that we felt we could kind of engage with. So it's good to know that when you're talking to your young people, that you're going to say to them, you know, we want to hear what you have to say. This is an agreement between us. So then the last thing, I suppose, is have something nice planned to do afterwards. So if it is, you know, a bit of a less than easy conversation, that we all know, yes, we're having this agreement and having this conversation about this agreement on Thursday, but after that, we're all going for a bike ride, or we're having a pizza, or we're watching a movie, or whatever we like to do in our family. There will be times, and again, Professor Etchells mentioned it, consequences where the agreement is broken, where, you know, there's a screen time agreement and it was so much time on this type or that type or the other type, and that's broken. You know, we didn't agree, we didn't stick to that. And when I did this with my daughter and we talked about the consequences of breaking the agreement, she was so hard on herself. You know, she was like, oh, well, if I go 10 minutes over, I'm not allowed to have it for another hour, or I, you know, lose it. And I was kind of going, okay, let's keep it in proportion. You know, it doesn't have to be quite as bad as all that. But if, you know, whatever you agree it together, be reasonable about it. That's the screen time bit, because you can actually put times on that. But if you're talking about other areas, then it really needs to be on a case-by-case basis. So see what happens and then see, well, how are we going to deal with that? But the key to all of this is that the sanction should focus on education, understanding and changing behaviours rather than punishing. And it should be prepared with your child. So the ideal that we're getting to, again, that Professor Etchells mentioned, is this idea of self-regulation. Then instead of you being there as the, you know, the judge and jury and the policing and saying, oh, that was so many minutes, or you did this or you did that, that they're able to learn themselves and able to regulate themselves. Now, it's not easy and it doesn't happen overnight, but that would be the aim, that we'd get to that point that they would be able to self-regulate. So this is what it looks like. I'm not going to go through it now, but these are the basics of it. Who's it for? How will we define screen time? What will we share? The types of content that we'll view, how will we communicate with people online, and what will we do if something goes wrong. So that's what's involved in it. But we all know life is real. It can rain a lot. You can plan a conference for people from all over the country, and then we can get a red warning and we have to deal with it. So we do live in the real world. And the same with this. So it's 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, it's rained all day, and your child has used up their screen time allowance. What are we going to do? Are we going to sit and look at the wall or whatever? No. We're going to say, the idea was that we didn't want everyone in different rooms all around the house individually, you know, on their own. That's what we really meant about the screen time. So why don't we all sit together and have one screen and let's watch a movie and make the popcorn and snuggle up with the blankets on a day like today? Because it has to work in the real world. So what we want is that reducing that isolated screen time and more, you know, all of us together as a family. So that's our online agreement. And as I said, one for everyone in the audience in your bag as you leave. Okay, thank you.